Hi, and welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I'm Martin Bailey, and joining us today is David Rowledge, the founder and managing director of Alchemy Wines. Welcome, David, and thank you for taking time out to join me today. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
More than welcome. Absolutely more than welcome. Look, I'm really excited to hear your story. So why don't you start us off by telling us, a bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so excuse me. I started off in the wine trade back in 1989. I was very fortunate to, it was with Greene King at the time, and started on my wine journey in terms of education, studying under Robin Cranmery MW, who was the head buyer for Greene King at the time. So I learned a lot about wine in general through that, and actually working in it was Thomas Peatling's. It was a part of one of the Greene King stores. And very fortunate to have a very lovely manager there who really encouraged me to take next steps, do as many of the wine courses as I probably possibly could. I can't remember, maybe 5 or 6 years after that, I moved to another brewery, Adnams, who are quite locally based to me in Suffolk. And again, we opened up their distribution channel of wines into the Essex market, which then grew into London, which actually went incredibly well, where we set up a warehouse to the west of London, where they were doing all their beers. But then with their wonderful portfolio of wines, we grew their distribution into quite some very well-known restaurants and pub groups, etc., in the city. And then beyond that, they bought a wine agency company. They were one of the biggest companies of an agency company called Hortons. And when they bought the company, they sadly had to get rid of the guy who ran the business. And I was very fortunate to be asked to take his position over as the sales guy for this agency business. Now, what was so fantastic about this agency business was it had some of the most unbelievable wines from all over the world, from Australia, New Zealand, France, Spain, South America, California. So this portfolio was just stunning. And we were selling to the likes of Majestic and Waitrose. We were doing own labels for Tesco's. We were dealing with the Wine Society. We were dealing, just all the top independent merchants around the country. So having that, being introduced to that buying network, as well as traveling extensively with my chairman, Simon Loftus, to meet some of these winemakers and understand it from the coalface about winemaking, wine production, different winemaking techniques. For me, it was like it was just this wonderful sponge moment where you just kept gaining information. I then went to another agency business, which I then tried to buy with my managing director, which didn't come off. And then in September 2002, I thought, okay, fine, this is now the time that I set up. So yeah, 22 years now. We're in our 22nd year. It's been a roller coaster, as running your own business always is. We had some wonderful contracts with the likes of Morrison's and Waitrose, where we sold them some substantial amounts of wine over a 10-year period. But it got a bit difficult. Sometimes these multiples call it a partnership, but actually they can really ground you down. And what's the comment? Revenue is I can't remember the term, but and profit is sanity.
Revenue's vanity.
Yeah, vanity and profit is sanity. And we got to that stage after supplying maybe 1 million cases over 10 years to some of these supermarkets, and there was just nothing in it. And I couldn't keep putting pressure on my supplier base, my winemaking partners. Every time I had a meeting, they wanted to squeeze me further.
They do. I mean, they're big retailers.
Exactly. And so in 2010, I took a massive decision to remove myself from the UK supermarkets and almost sort of pledged to myself, I'm not going to deal with with supermarkets
No,
again.
Interestingly, David. So, I mean, if you look, it was obviously you started a business and you're with the big supermarkets. So there was obviously quite a lot of learning there. So if you were to rewind,
Yes.
when you started the business all over again, what would you do differently this time?
What I do differently, I think one was the way they like to do the business, which was based on a retrospective discount proposition where we had trader driver brands in there. So you would have the wine listed, let's say at $9.99, and then they would drop it down to $6.99 as one of their big. Now, cash flow wise, that became a real issue because you'd invoice them on at a certain value, and then they'd claim back a large chunk of it 3 months later. So your cash flow would go absolutely sky high, but then absolutely crap. And you just had to manage those huge, we were actually on a television advert over a Christmas period. They ordered something like, I have only one team member here based in the UK. I have winemaking partners around the world, but here I have a very small, lean team, and that's the way I've sort of structured the business. But they would order £600,000 worth of wine in the October for a November, December promotion. And you'd be going, oh my God, how brilliant is that? But actually it's then the first quarter of the next year where volumes have died, where you suddenly get this massive, great retrospect, and you're like, my goodness me, that is a challenge.
So how did you manage those peaks and troughs? I mean, because obviously that as you said, it is a challenge for cash flow.
Yeah, so I was very sensible in my view. The first 2 or 3 years we did it, I said, this is ridiculous. We need to build a buffer in here somehow. So what I did with my accountants, I allocated something in the region of anywhere between 2 and 5 euro cents on all the sales as a buffer. So any bottle sold, we would put it into a pot where you could manage those fluctuations. So we ended up, I think, at the peak of it, we ended up with about £100,000 in that floating pot. So we wouldn't touch it for anything else, and it would just sit there as your buffer. So the next year when those promotions came in, not only would we have that 100,000, but it would ebb and flow with the value in it. So it was a learning curve. It was a learning curve.
No, it would be. Were there any other tools that you used to manage your cash flow at that time?
No, I think we just had to get more brutal with the buyers, and then when that happens, suddenly do you feel that you're going up to a meeting on a positive note or a slightly more negative note? So my long drives up to Bradford, which would happen every quarter, I'd actually get quite nervous, on those trips. I'd tag it in with seeing other customers on the way up and on the way back, but it wasn't you turn up in the big reception rooms and you didn't feel, you never felt, because there were 30 other companies after that slot, after those listings on a shelf. If you made a step wrong, and I'll give you a very interesting. So when Morrison's bought Safeway, this is going back many years, it was 2005. The buyer, I was working from home at this time, and I'll never forget this conversation. The buyer turned around to me and said, "David, we're potentially going to be buying twice as much more wine from you. So what's your new price going to be?" And I was like, "James, what are you talking about? I've put it into a milk bottle for you. I'm not using a proper screw, but all these, there's nothing more I can give." He said, "Oh, great, David, that's really good news. So if I offer your business slots to 2 other companies that are vying for your business, I can hand them the scalpel for them to cut each other's throats until I get the deal I want." And I went, "James, if that's how you want to do it,"
off you go.
And I said to him, knowing what I know about the wine trade, and the brand was from the south of France, I said to him, those guys that you're offering that proposition to, I can guarantee you now, after 6 or 7 months, they will renege on that deal and they'll try to put the prices up, because it's just not, it's not a sustainable business. And I said, if that happens, please call me back and we'll develop something together where you and I will be absolutely happy that we've got all the terms and conditions that we're both happy with moving forward. And within 8 months, he was on the phone saying, David, you're absolutely right. What do we do now? And within 2 years, we got the 7th largest French brand coming into the UK market.
Well done, well done.
Yeah.
But you're right. But sometimes you've got to stand your ground.
Oh, absolutely.
And believe in your own values and your own principles.
Yeah, exactly.
So look, I mean, you obviously said you got quite a small lean team in the UK.
Yes.
A number of buyers. I mean, so what's been your biggest learnings from as being an employer since you began the business?
Well, being an employer, well, having a very small team, each one of those team members has an incredibly varied role, if that makes sense. Because finding that right character who is happy, and if I go, I traveled to the US and Canada to go and see my customers over there. That was a 10-day trip. I've just come back from Dubai, where I've seen my team out there, my distribution partners out there. That person, or those persons have to be really confident if I'm away, to be able to just do the stuff that is going on behind the scenes all the time. So that is a
I mean, how do you identify that in your recruitment process that they've got?
What I've always tried to do, and it might seem a bit daft, but but having a small team, every person from my team gets copied in on an email that I send. So that's just, and what we try to do is to ask our customers and our supplier base to do exactly the same. And that does take some, there are businesses out there that have a completely opposite policy. If you're going to send an email, then just do it to the person you want him to be in contact with. Well, when you run so we've had to really be very adamant that, please, this is how we work. If I'm not available, whoever it would be coming back to you, and whether it's a holding email saying, look, David's away, he'll be back to you, whatever it might be. And we have to take in consideration, my day is it can be quite lengthy, because we have distribution partners in China and Japan from one extremity, and then you move across to the Middle East, Africa, Europe, Ireland, New York, Boston, Vancouver.
Yeah.
When I get up in the morning, the first things we're attending to are with the time differences are the replies required from the east of the planet, to then when you're trying to go home in the evening, you're dealing with the ones to the west of the planet. So that's another thing that I don't think I've ever had a. Actually, my sister mentioned it the other day. She said, "When was the last time you had a holiday?"
When was the last time you had a holiday?
Well, I went to Dubai to have a holiday, and I was there for 10 days, and I worked for 6. So in her view, that really wasn't a holiday. And she said, David, I can't remember the last time you actually had a holiday. I don't think I've ever turned on my, whatever it is, on your email. I'm on annual leave. I've never turned that on, or I've never, so that again, it's something that not only myself but my family have to be aware of. I was going to ask, actually. I mean, obviously there is a bit of an imbalance there, but the sounds of it. So how what do you try and do to find that balance between family time and work? Well, I am usually quite good at, when I do go home at night, then the phone sort of stays out of the room, and it's a policy that we try and do with our children as well. And when you've got an 18-year-old and 17-year-old, we will say, look, if we're having a family dinner, or we're going to watch a family movie, whatever it might be, we try and they're not allowed any of their phones in their bedrooms at night or whatever. So all that is, so we've instilled that as an ongoing. So there are moments where you just, but also I think the other balance I try and exercise is a massive balancing act for me. So most lunchtimes I've got a buddy who has an office around the corner. We'll go and do 12 or 14 miles for an hour on a bike. I play squash. I run. So that's, again, is a very important balance for me to it's all about, if I go out on a bike ride by myself, I have the decision whether I think about work or I completely switch off. Yeah. And if I'm with a buddy, we'll talk about other stuff. So that gives you a natural way of trying to switch off while you're actually doing something quite proactive.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And were the family with you when you were in Dubai?
They were, but they didn't. They sadly there were only 4 days that we actually spent as a, and I had some conference calls that I had to do, and I get with a 3-hour difference in time difference. That was later on in the evening, so it was those types of things. But anyway, they had a lovely time. I had a lovely time as well, but it was just, it was a bit more than I was expecting. Yeah.
So look, I mean, in terms of, everybody starts a business, and you've got 22 years in now, but everybody starts a business and they've got their own, dreams and ideas about business. What are some of the common misconceptions about running a business?
So I think one is, and it's come to light a bit more than I thought in the past. So a lot of people have always said, David, what's your exit strategy? As a major point. And I've always said to them, look, I love what I do. I do not have a problem getting up in the morning. If I'm talking about the wines that I've made with my winemaking partners, and we're selling it into 20 different countries around the world, if I'm having to get on a plane to go and do that when I'm 70 years old, I don't mind doing that, because it's something I really love. And the people you meet, the places you go, the learning curve of visiting different places that you haven't been to before, different wineries, different winemaking partners, all those sorts of things. But over the last, I think, because of the revolving door that we've had, of Brexit, COVID, the war, and now we've had these duty increases, and it's a very muddled situation at the moment. If somebody said to me now, David, if somebody came and would like to, probably, I don't know what it would be, either roll you into a big organization or whatever, I would seriously have a look at it. And the other thing I think that is really important for new businesses is to understand all of the things that have to go on behind the scenes that you don't sometimes think about. We've now just done a new deal with a online Wineflyer. It's part of the BA group. They have their own, it's Avios, the Avios point scheme. Yep. So they don't have a bonded warehouse. So the work that we've had to do I don't usually ship or get involved in any shipping or the duty of any of the wines that we sell, because they're going off into, so we make the wines and it disappears, to whichever country it's going to. For this particular deal, and so therefore I've had to look at having to postpone my VAT, because it's a big chunk of VAT, which has so that all of those things behind, and Brexit has caused all sorts of additional costs involved with red tape and making things more complicated. And I don't think sometimes the government really see it from a small business perspective, because the time and energy it takes to rectify those little changes and the cost implications on top of that have been huge. And it's all those little things that you suddenly go, oh my goodness me, I need to sort that out. And there's not one telephone line that you pick up to the HMRC. There's about 30 different things, whether it's duty, whether it's customs, whether it's this, that, and whatever. And to sort this postponed, I have had to email, I think, four different departments, of which some don't even have a direct telephone number, to set up my gateway to be able to do this proposition. And that's 3 or 4 hours of extra stress and strain and energy that it would be so much better if it was simplified. Okay. So there's in terms of misconceptions from your perspective, it's about, you mentioned exit plan in there. Yes.
A lot of people go into business without even having an exit plan.
Exactly. Yeah.
Saying, well, actually, you should go into business with, what is your exit plan?
Whether it's 5, 10, 15, whatever it is, just have something. So it's not set in stone, but you've got yourself a goal.
Yeah. So you're working towards that goal.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So look, the final question for me, I mean, obviously your business has been growing over the last 20 years. What do you attribute your growth to?
Well, no, growing is one thing. So when we removed those brands out of the UK supermarkets, we lost 70% of our revenue. Right, okay. So that was a massive decision.
Yeah.
So we were already shipping quite a lot to the Middle East. We were working with a small distributor in Canada. We'd done a little bit in Japan, but my view then was, rather than having all your eggs in one market basket, as it were, I said to myself, we need to grow, we need to gradually grow. So if we've now got 20 markets, if I lose one, I lose 10% of my business. I don't lose 70% of my business. So it was a gradual spread of international markets where, again, volumes weren't as high, but the potential on making a little bit more per bottle was slightly greater. So even though the volumes had dropped dramatically, the margin increase was small, but you would feel that you'd spread your risk a bit. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So you obviously a big decision losing those 70% of your business, but you've been gradually growing.
Exactly. Yeah. With
a more sustainable level.
More sustainable, and with partners that I don't think would drop you just because just because you there was an issue with supply or whatever it was.
So you're going back. Yeah, you're going back all the way back to where we started, which is don't chase the revenue.
Yeah.
The revenue is. I suppose your values, your principles, and your goals are aligned with who you're dealing with. So therefore, it becomes a partnership and not a win-win situation rather than a win-lose situation.
Exactly. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Look, David, it's been your story's been amazing. So you've obviously got a lot of experience there. You've been through quite a lot in the last 23 years. And thank you so much for sharing that with everybody today. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's been great having you on the podcast. So
absolute pleasure, and be aware I could talk about wine for about a month. So just
but that's good. The passion comes through.
Exactly.
So, have a fantastic morning, and I'll hopefully be speaking to you soon.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David.
Okay, take care.